This simple study system that I'm going to share with you in this video allowed me to go from a failing student all my life to achieving a 95 plus ATAR against all odds. And this same study system allowed me to get above 90 for all my exams. It allowed me to smash my university exams too. And it genuinely allows me to confidently learn and apply anything. You can give me any topic, and by following this same system, I'll be able to learn it and understand it well and ace it genuinely. Okay. Now, this study system, the best part about it is that it is so simple to follow that even a 5-year-old kid could understand it. And if that is the case, you definitely can. Now, before I jump in this video real quick, I want to give a quick disclaimer. If you're unable to watch an entire video teaching you how to study, like the most fundamental thing you need to do well in an exam, then you're cooked. Genuinely, you're cooked. If you cannot watch a video that's, I don't know how long this video is going to be, maybe 30 minutes, 20 minutes, I'm not sure. If you can't sit down and watch this whole thing, like just give up right now, like genuinely, right? So before we get started, please grab a pen, grab a paper, and take notes on what I'm about to share with you today. Listen, you need to take notes and need to do what I say. Let's jump right into it. Let's not waste any time. So let's say we've sat down to study for your exams, or let's say you learned a new topic in class today. You've come home, you've sat down. What the hell do you do? It's a big question. It's a big problem that a lot of people have, where they sit down and they don't know what to do. Like they literally don't know how to study. And look, it's not your fault if you don't know how to study, because no one teaches you how. Your tutors don't, your schools don't, and YouTube won't also, to be honest with you. If you go on YouTube, search up how to study, like it's just confusing. It's all over the place. So it's not your fault, but now it is your fault if you don't know how to study after this video, because I'm about to share with you what to do, okay? So we've sat down to study. What's the first thing to do? The first step of this study system is what I call prime, okay? That is the first thing you need to do to study. It's called priming. Now, what is priming? Priming is where you want to expose yourself to what you are about to learn. That's the key word. You expose yourself to what you're about to learn. And this is the first thing you need to do before you do anything, okay? Now, I'm going to illustrate what priming is using a very good example, which is constructing a house. When we are constructing a house, there are the stages of obviously building the foundation of the house, then framing it, then putting the roof, and then doing the exterior and interior of the house, okay? Now, what most people do is that when they are studying, they try to build the house as they go, okay? So this builder right here, when he's laying this foundation out, do you think he's just improvising? When this guy is on top of the roof, forming the roof, do you think he's improvising? When the builders form this frame of the house, the skeleton of the house, do you think they're just making it up as they go? No, because there's no way the house would end up looking like this if they were just making it up. So what do they do instead? What they do instead is they have a blueprint that they follow. They have an architectural design, a floor plan with all the measurements, with all the details of the house, how it should look, how it's structured, all that stuff before they start building. And that's why when you see this guy here, laying out the foundations of a house, in the back of his mind, he is following this plan. He knows what he's doing before he's even done it. Okay, before a house is built, before an apartment is built, before a building is built, it doesn't matter what it is. They know exactly how it should look before anything's done. They know all the details. Okay, and that is why the house that they build is able to look like this. It's why it's good structure. It's why it doesn't collapse when the wind blows. It's why it looks nice and the way that the owner wants it, etc., etc., etc. Because it's planned out before anything's happened. And, even this guy, when he's doing the roof, when the frame is formed of the house, they are following something, which is this. Now, how is this relevant for studying? When it comes to studying, it's quite literally the same thing. It's priming. Now, what is priming? Priming is where you essentially form that blueprint before you start studying your subject, before you start studying the topic. Okay. And the whole purpose of priming is that it significantly boosts your learning efficiency as it pre-activates relevant mental pathways needed to make what you're about to learn much easier. Now it's a big wordy, definition or paragraph, but let me show you an example of this. If you are about to study something that what it's about, then when you come to actually study the subject, it's going to be way easier to study. But the big problem is that most of you right now, when you learn when you learn something, when you're learning something, you don't know what you're about to do. You just go with the textbook. You just follow the teacher. You just look at the slides. And when you get home, you just look at the slide, look at the text. You just follow everything and then hope that by the end of it, I will know everything. But that's a big problem, because the truth is, if you don't have some sort of idea of what you're about to learn, then you don't know if what you're learning is right. It's like, for example, this builder, right? This is why I've given an example of constructing a house. Imagine if this guy had no idea how the house looks, has no idea what the framing looks, has no idea what the structure is like. How the hell is this guy going to build the house? They can't. That's why they have this. So it's the same thing when it comes to learning anything. So the way you use priming is simply this. Before learning any new topic, okay, any new topic, let's say right now you're learning a new topic in class. Before you learn it, you want to print out and read through the syllabus. Then you want to see what the main headings and subheadings are and how everything fits together. And then you want to create a Google Doc and map out all the syllabus outcomes. This is the equivalent of forming this blueprint for a house. In other words, you want to learn and see what you're about to learn before you actually start learning it. Okay, so let me give an example. Let's say you're doing economics, okay, and you're on the topic of the global economy, which is topic 1 of HSC economics. Okay, what most people do is they just jump right in. They jump right into the textbook. They jump right into the teacher's slides. They do all that stuff, right? But what I want you to do is, before you start learning it, before you start doing it, okay, now if it's too late at the time of watching this video, still do this, by the way. But I'm just saying, before you start learning anything, you want to print out the syllabus section where it talks about this topic, and you want to read through this syllabus. Like, actually read through it, right? Read through it, highlight the keywords, see what you're learning, see the headings, right? So when you read this, by the way, you do this before you learn anything, okay? So let's say I'm about to learn, HSC topic 1 of chemistry, of economics, which is global economy. I'd read this and I'd be like, okay, examine. Okay, so first thing we're doing is examining economic issues. Okay, read this, read blah, blah, okay. And then the next topic is applying, okay. And then boom, and okay. By doing this, you are forming a skeleton in the back of your mind that will allow you to fit things in when you actually learn it. In other words, let's say, for example, you're learning about protection. Okay. Instead of just reading through the textbook now, because you've read through the syllabus before, now when it comes to reading the textbook, you're going to know, okay, I need to know the reasons of protection. And then you're going to see in the textbook where that is, and then you can fit it back in the syllabus, right? So this is the first step before learning anything. Now, I know this might be surprising because it's not even actually like studying it. We're not even studying right now. We're simply exposing ourselves to what we're about to study first, which is priming. And this step is essential. It boosts your learning efficiency so fast. And I've tried both. I've tried studying without priming and with priming. The difference is insane. Okay, so that is step 0. Now, once you've primed the information, once you've seen and exposed yourself to what you're about to learn, the next step, or the first step, you could argue, is to now understand the content. This is where you want to deeply understand the concept that you're about to learn, or you're learning right now. Okay. Now, when I say understand, this stage is split into 2 things. The first is to properly digest the content. In other words, know what the F is happening. Like, actually understand. One of the biggest problems that I see students have is that they have a serious, shallow understanding of all the content. Like, they don't even understand what's happening. They memorize everything, they force themselves to do questions, but they don't even understand the foundations of what they're learning. And that is why this first step is arguably the most important thing, because this step here is what allows the next steps to be much easier. All right? So the first step of understanding is, what I mean by this, is properly digesting the content. And the way you understand topics, the way you deeply understand a topic that you're learning, is through using a technique called inquiry-based learning. Okay, now inquiry-based learning is when you constantly question the material that you're learning by using questions like how, why, what, so what, who cares? Okay. And by constantly questioning the material that you're learning, you're going to get a deeper and deeper understanding until there's nothing left to know. Such a simple method, yet so powerful. So let me give you an example of this. When you're learning about DNA replication in biology, instead of just simply reading it and nodding your head like you understand, ask yourself, but how does it work? Okay, how does DNA replication work? Okay, but why is DNA replication even important? Okay, but so what? Like, why? What would happen if I didn't have DNA replication? Right? Who cares? What would happen to the body if DNA replication didn't exist? Right? And by questioning this stuff all the time, you're going to get the answers. And when you get the answers, your understanding is going to deepen. Right? Same thing for any subject. Okay? If in if in, let's say, what's another subject? Let's say PDH, right? If what you need to learn is that, it's important to stretch before exercising, just came up with now. Okay, but why is it important? But what would happen if I didn't do it? How would I actually stretch? You get the idea. This is applicable to all topics, even math. For example, let's say you're learning something in math, right? You come across a formula. Instead of just blindly looking at the formula and being like, yep, this is the formula, ask yourself, how was the formula even formed? Like, how did this even come about? Why is this formula used? Like, why can't another formula like it be used? Why is this specific way used? And you get the idea. And by doing this, you'll be able to deepen your understanding like literally no one else can. So the way you would apply inquiry-based learning during class is by simply doing this. As your teacher is explaining or going through something, you just want to ask them questions to further deepen your understanding. Very simple, right? And this is especially important if you don't understand what's happening, because if you don't understand what's happening, there and then the teacher should be telling you what that is. Okay, so when I'm in class, and when I was in class during year 11 and 12, whenever my teacher was going through something on the slides, I wouldn't just sit there just being like this. Like, I would actively listen. And the minute I had a question, I'd raise my hand and ask the teacher to explain. And this is something a lot of people don't do because they're scared. They're scared that, oh, what if my friends think I'm stupid? Or what if I get laughed at? Who gives a crap? This is for your understanding and your education and your learning. So the next time you're in class, when a teacher is explaining a topic, don't just sit there and take notes, right? You want to actively listen and ask the questions, right? If your teacher's going to topic X, ask, but miss or sir, how is this? Why is this? So what? Give me an example of this. Okay. And when you're at home, it's the same thing, but you want to use stuff like Google or watch YT videos, YouTube videos, or even use ChatGPT, right? If you're at home and you're revising and learning a topic on your own, still ask the questions and still get solutions by Googling it, right? And that is how you'll be able to deepen your understanding very, very easily. Okay. Inquiry-based learning. Now, that's not the only thing you want to do during this first step of studying. You also want to organize the content that you're understanding to ensure that it addresses the syllabus. And the way you do this is by taking syllabus notes. Okay? So during this understand phase of studying, you want to take concise and straight to the point notes under each heading of the syllabus. And this ensures that you're addressing everything that is required. Okay? So as you know from this first step, right, of priming, we read the syllabus, we look through it, and now we understand what we're learning, right? Once we've understood what we're learning and understood the content of that we're learning, then we want to actually take notes of it inside of the syllabus itself. And what I mean by that is this. Let's say we have the syllabus here, right? You want to take notes under each of these headings. Okay, so you take notes, under global economy, you put the notes underneath. Then, gross world product underneath, globalization, blah, blah, blah. You want to put your notes in this syllabus to ensure that you're addressing all the content that is in. Now, you need to understand that the syllabus is the key to success because the syllabus is what forms every single exam question. So if you're not addressing the syllabus and if you do not understand the syllabus, then of course you're not going to do well in the exam. Everything comes from the syllabus, and that is why I'd recommend you take syllabus notes. Now, sometimes people tell me, but do I need to take notes? Like, why do I need to? You don't need to take notes. You don't need to take notes. However, I'd recommend you have notes. Meaning, if you don't want to take the notes yourself, at least use someone else's notes. At least use some notes. You need to have notes, right? Now, whether you want to take your own or not, it's up to you. For me personally, it was a half-half. For some subjects, I didn't because I found really good ones online. But for other subjects, I did because there weren't really good ones. But the point is this: as long as you have an organized document of information that addresses the syllabus properly, that is all you need. Okay? Because this guarantees you know the content. Like, you should never ever walk into an exam ever and see a question and be like, "What? I was never taught this." That doesn't exist because everything comes from the syllabus. So for you to be like this, I've never been taught this. Like, that's your fault because everything is in the syllabus. You can't be taught something that's outside of the syllabus. Okay, so that is the first step after priming, which is understanding the content. Now, once we've understood the content and taken our notes, this is where most people stop, truthfully. A lot of people just stop here. And then what they end up doing is they end up, studying passively by just reading those notes over and over and over. But you don't want to do that. You then want to go on to step 2, which is to retrieve. In other words, we now need to memorize the content that you've just understood. Okay? Now, most people, like I said, just to reiterate the point, because this is most likely you, they will just reread their notes, right? So they'll take nice, pretty notes and they'll just reread, revise, and then rewrite, and then rewrite, then highlight. Then those are all trash methods. That will not allow you to memorize anything. The way you memorize, and the best way to memorize all your content, is through 2 techniques: active recall and spaced repetition. Okay, let's start with active recall. What is active recall? Active recall is where you retrieve the information from your brain through self-testing. Okay, so instead of putting the information in your brain, you want to take it out of your brain by testing yourself on the information. Now, there's many ways of using active recall, and I'll give you the best 2 ways. The best 2 ways is, the first method is flashcards. Okay, you may have heard of it, you may have used it, but if you're not doing well in school right now, you're using them completely wrong. So for flashcards, you want to create yourself questions from the notes that you've taken. So these notes right here, we want to create flashcards from them that test your understanding. Okay, now there's plenty of ways of creating flashcards. I'd recommend using tools like Anki, Notion, Google Sheets, a simple Google Doc, or Quizlet. Personal recommendation is Anki and Notion. Those are the 2 apps that I used to create myself questions, and they were extremely, extremely powerful. Okay, and I'll make videos on both of these in the future. Method number 2 of active recall would be blurting. Now, blurting is where you test yourself by writing what you know from memory and what you've forgotten you want to see through looking back at the notes. Okay, so let's say, for example, we have just learned about, globalization. Okay, I spelled that wrong. Globalization. Okay, let's say we've learned about that. Once we've understood the content and organize our notes, the way we would actively test ourselves in this through blurting would be to write down everything we know about that from memory, and when we forget something, we want to go ahead and revise that. Okay, and you just want to repeat this until you memorized everything, right? Now, in terms of tools for blurting, it's literally just iPad or like a blank piece of paper. Doesn't matter, all right? So that is active recall. It's simply where you test yourself on the content through either writing it from memory or asking yourself questions, and by doing that, you will easily memorize the information, okay? And this is a very, very, rare thing to see in any student. Most students simply read over their notes, but if you just read over your notes, if you just rewrite your notes, if you highlight your notes, it leads to something called the illusion of competence, where you think you know the content, but you don't. Nothing is going in your memory, okay? So that's the first method of memorization. You now want to pair this method, you want to combine this method with the second one, which is spaced repetition. And spaced repetition is where you review the material that you've learned, repeatedly over set intervals of time. And the reason why spaced repetition is so important is because it defeats something called the forgetting curve. Now, what is the forgetting curve? The forgetting curve is this blue line right here, okay? It's basically where when you first learn something in school or at home, your memory of that information is 100% initially. Okay, so let's say if you read your textbook on a specific topic, or you take your notes or whatever, that very first moment of writing it down and understanding, you have a very good memory of it. Like, you can recall it instantly. But over the next 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 6 days, and 10 days, your memory of that content is practically zero. You lose everything. And that is why most people, they walk into an exam thinking they know the content, but they actually don't. Because although they've remembered it when they first learned it, when they're actually doing the exam, which is around let's say day 14, their memory is over here. So they have a very poor understanding and memory of that content. But what spaced repetition does is that it intercepts it. Let's say when you first learn a content, let's say you learn topic 1 here, okay? Topic 1, when you first learn topic 1, your memory of it is very high. However, if you review topic 1 in the next, 2 days, what happens? It comes down, ready? Comes down. You review it, it goes back up. Then it repeats. It goes down. But let's say you review it again in the next 5 days. That goes up again. And then down, and then up, then down, then up, then down, then up. And it keeps repeating until your exam. And guess what? Because you've done spaced repetition, when you come to your exam, you will still have a very strong memory of that content. Okay? That is what spaced repetition is and how it works. Now, how do you actually use it? If you're using flashcards, Anki does this automatically. So that's the powerful thing about Anki and even other flashcard apps. But if you're using something like Notion, which I personally also use alongside Anki, you can set reminders in the app through using the @remind feature. And by the way, I'll make a whole another video on this. I don't want to include it now because now the video will be too long. And for blurting, this is also simple. You simply just want to redo your blurt in the next few days, then incrementally increase. Right? So for example, let's say you've done the blurting method for globalization today. Okay. You then want to do it again in the next 2 days, then in the next 6 days, then in the next, 2 weeks, etc., etc. The whole goal of spaced repetition is to gradually increase over time, because the more you increase, the stronger your memory and the longer you will retain the information. Okay. So that is how you retrieve and remember the information that you've learned and understood during these 2 steps. Are you following so far? Great. Now, this is also where most students fail, okay? So, as I said before, like 95% of people, they just stay at this step where they understand everything and then they just read their notes over and over and over again. And obviously that's very ineffective, so they don't do well in the exam. But let's say there's a select few of students who don't just do that, they also do this step. Again, another 95% of people just stay here. And the problem with just staying in this step of retrieving and memorizing the information is the fact that you're not able to apply the information you've learned, right? If you were to just do flashcards and just do blurting and just do these methods, you're never going to be able to succeed in an exam because your understanding is limited to just simple recall. But the fact is, your exams that you're going to see are not just simple recall. They're much more than that. And that is why the third step of this study system is to apply the content. And this is where you want to apply the content that you've memorized in this step. And the way you do that is through past paper questions. Now, I want to make something very clear. Retrieve, which is this step here where we, memorize information, is not the same thing as applying. Because I've had some people in the past say, "Oh, hey, Lukeman, because I'm doing flashcards, I am applying my content. I am applying my knowledge, right? Because I'm reviewing my flashcards." Or, because I'm doing blurting, I am applying the content because I'm, testing myself. No, okay? Applying is where you actually want to apply your knowledge through doing practice questions. And the best way to do that is through past papers, okay? You need to do more past papers. If you do not do past papers, and when I say past papers, I mean timed and under exam conditions, then you will never ever do well in the exam as well as you want to, at least. Yeah, you might get 70% in the exam. Yeah, you might get even 80%. But to get above that, you cannot do it without doing past papers, okay? Because, I don't understand the logic behind this, right? You're preparing for an exam. So one of the best ways to prepare for an exam is to do practice exams. And that is why step 3 is extremely important, right? You want to apply your knowledge through doing past papers. Now, if you do past paper questions and you're finding it very, very, very difficult, start with textbook questions just to build the foundation. But the minute you've built that foundation, you want to jump to past papers. Okay? That is step number 3. Now, step number 3.1 is where we document mistakes. And I don't know where the other thing went. Sorry, knowledge gap, sorry. Yes. So step 3.1 is where you now want to document the mistakes and knowledge gaps that you've made from the past paper that you've just done. Again, this is what most students don't do, right? Most students, when it comes to doing past papers, they just spam questions. They just spam questions over and over and over again and hope for the best. But the problem is, you don't improve by just doing the questions. You improve through reflection and improvement. So when you do a past paper, you want to, like after you've done the past paper or the past paper questions, you want to document the mistakes and knowledge gaps that you've found in that past paper. So let's say, for example, you're doing math and you're doing a math past paper, and the mistakes that you made in that paper after you've marked yourself is something like, incorrect units or not reading the question carefully. Right? You want to write these mistakes down, and you also want to document the knowledge gaps. Now, what a knowledge gap is the specific stuff that you didn't know or remember. So let's say you're doing something on, like chemistry, right? And it comes to answering a question, and you actually did not know how to solve that specific question, then that is a knowledge gap because you lack the knowledge to answer the question, right? And you want to list it out. So for example, the way you document that is just by being like, okay, topic 1, and topic 2, and etc. Pretty much just the topics that you didn't know how to apply. Once you've documented the mistakes and knowledge gaps from that past paper, you then want to fix those mistakes and knowledge gaps. And the way you fix the mistakes and knowledge gaps is through this. Mistakes, you want to have a mistake book, right? So I recommend you have an A5 book for each subject titled mistake book. And in those mistake books, you want to document the mistakes you make in an exam. So I had one for math, I had one for bio, I had one for all my subjects, right? And in this mistake book, I'll just list out everything. So not reading the question carefully, incorrect units, not defining key terms, etc. You want to write down all the mistakes. And before every practice session, you want to read over this mistake book. Now, to fix your knowledge gaps, it's very simple. You just want to go back and repeat steps 0 to 2. Right? This is how you fix your knowledge gaps. Okay? And then once you've fixed your mistakes and knowledge gaps, you then want to do targeted practice questions in the apply stage. Okay? So let me give you a practical example of this. Let's say we're doing a math paper. Okay? And once I've done the math paper, I document my mistakes and knowledge gaps. And I find that the knowledge gaps that I have is trigonometry. Okay. I then fix my knowledge gap of trigonometry by watching YouTube videos, by going back to the textbook, by, refreshing my mind. Then what I want to do is do targeted practice questions on specifically trigonometry. This is the key to success. A 100-meter sprinter, right? They don't sprint the whole 100 meters. Like when they train, they don't sprint the whole 100 meters. What they do train is they train the first 10 meters because that starting point is the most important thing. Or let's say, for example, you're learning a new skill, right? Let's say you're learning, basketball, right? Let's say you're really, really good at 3-pointers, but you really, really suck at doing layups. Why would you focus on the 3-pointers when you suck at layups? No, what you want to do is focus on the layups because that's what's going to hold you back in the game. Same thing with anything, right? You don't get better by focusing on the thing you already know how to do. You get better by focusing on the things that you genuinely suck at and find difficult. That is how you improve, okay? And there you have it. That is the simple study system that I followed to achieve a 95 plus ATAR, and how pretty much every other student who does well, they do this, okay? Again, just to recap, the way you study is first start off by priming, right? And this is where you expose yourself to what you're about to learn by looking at the syllabus and seeing what you're going to learn. Then you understand the content, which is by actually digesting it and taking notes. Then once you've done that, you want to retrieve it and memorize it through active recall and spaced repetition. The way you do active recall is through flashcards and blurting, and the way you do spaced repetition is simply by revising it over, increasing time. Then once you've remembered it, you want to do apply, which is by doing past paper questions. And during your past paper questions, you want to follow this cycle of documenting your mistakes, fixing them, and then doing targeted practice on them. Okay? And that is the system. Okay? Please, please, please follow this to the T for your next exam or when you're studying right now, and you will see how powerful it is. Okay? And if you have any questions, make sure you ask me down in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.